Um, Probably should have started earlier. Try again. Any minute now. Looks like my audio levels are good. They were the same from last time. We'll wait to see what the stream has to say about that. Cool. Sounds like AirPods are still good for the stream. Cool. Sounds like AirPods are still good for the stream. Okay. Looks like stream saying can't get Discord video streaming working. Well, if that's, I mean, we can make that work. We can do test streams in between these. That's fine. So stream saying can't get Discord video streaming working. Well, if that's, I mean, we can make that work. We can do test streams in between these. That's fine. Yeah, happy to hook up any streams that want to hook up to this. So all good. Judging by last stream, I'm going to give it about 5 minutes and then we'll get started. Yeah, happy to hook up any streams that want to hook up to this. So all good. I see the stream talking about my heart sunglasses. Yep. Happy to take those, by the way. Last stream, I'm going to give it about 5 minutes and then we'll get started. All right, looks like a lot of people coming in the chat. Hi everybody. Hi everyone. Hi, who's latest? Joanne. Hi. Hi. Looks like there was some, at least a little bit of me talking over myself, so I'm gonna turn that down. Yeah, turn down the real-time stream that I have here. I'm on delay. There's probably a good way to fix that. I'm not sure. Still exploring a lot of this OBS stuff. I know last time we talked about getting my desktop to share, but look, I did look into that and it was like a Catalina thing specifically. Haven't fixed it yet, so. I am switching switching scenes to the subject and my slides. There it goes. Hey Frankie, I see you on stream. Good to see you. Good to see you coming out. Brian, I see you too. Good to see you, bud. All right, everybody. I think we'll just get started. It's about the right time. So code once, target everywhere. This is the dream with React Native. I want to say thanks to everybody for showing up tonight here on YouTube. This is good stuff. Last time was the first time we'd done this. This will be the second time, and I really liked it. It was good. I really like the that's already recorded. I really like that other people can join, even if they have like time constraints or anything like that. Just want to make sure real quick, everyone can see the slides well and everything. My audio levels are good. Just let me know in the chat stream, and I can adjust real quick before we get started. But so we're gonna be talking about tonight is the code one stream. Hey Melanie, good to see you, Melanie. Thanks for coming out. Man, so good to see everybody's avatars and names in the stream. It's good stuff. Cool. Thanks, Noah. Thanks for the confirmation. Okay, so let's get going. So yeah, that's what we're gonna be talking about is the code once, target everywhere kind of deal. React Native has been promising this for a long time, and it's been something that developers wanted for a long time before React Native even started, right? Like back in the day, we had to target for Internet Explorer, Firefox, and Chrome, and before that, it was even going further back, like Netscape. If anybody remembers that, I do. But good stuff. So this has always been a dream, and React Native is just the latest to take it up with the latest platforms that didn't exist back then. So let's see how this goes. And React Native does actually just straight up say it's going to deliver on this stream. It's a tagline from the site. Learn once, write anywhere. Anywhere is it's a big statement. I mean, that's already a promise. Here's the pitch from the site. React Native combines the best parts of native element with React, written in JavaScript, rendered with native code. So this is React saying that it's going to do it. It's going to do it for us in the mobile aspect of this. Facebook supported, community driven, big community behind React and React Native. Facebook's obviously a big entity out there. That's going to be a big help to keeping the projects going forward, keeping them relevant and up to date. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But community driven, it really is. There's a passionate community behind React Native, and that's a good sign if you ask me for any package, any framework, anything like that. So this is cool. We'll see how it goes. The dream here is to kind of consolidate this tech stack that we have to deal with for targeting multiple devices. React and Express, probably. If we're doing a React web app, we're probably gonna use Express. It's all JS anyway. iOS and Swift, that's a whole nother language and a whole nother platform, and Android and Kotlin. Kotlin being this is the language that has come up above Java. It's Java-like. It's pretty good, actually. You should check it out if you're curious, but we want to consolidate these down to a code base. And that's the dream. The same code getting along across all these platforms. And let's see what we do. Why would we even want that? Well, I want all the things. First off, I'm going to want to be able to deploy my app and write my app simply. And I want it to be working on all the things. I want it to do everything it possibly can. I literally want all the things. So React Native doesn't necessarily promise all the things, but it promises a lot, like we already saw. And here are the big promises. Number one, less code to maintain. If I have a single code base to start with, that is just less code simply to maintain. It's all in the same language. It's all my developers and my team I can work on it all together without having a whole lot of friction between the two teams that are writing in different languages or anything like that. And that's great. We also want to deliver quickly to more targets. If I'm starting a new app, as opposed to something existing, if I'm starting a very new app, especially in the mobile game, I can deliver quickly to more targets if I write it with one code base, right? So if I have the single code base for Android and iOS, then that cuts my development time essentially in half. There's some things I don't want from this though. I really don't want hardware limitations, and I really don't want many small exceptions for each target. Like I said, even in the days of the browser wars, small exceptions for each target was a thing, and it's something web developers have had to deal with forever. So I don't want that because I'm kind of burned out on it, but the question is, how much of it do I have? There's probably going to be some. I'm just going in with the expectation that there's going to be some. So, okay, let's build a simple project. We're going to start off with a very simple project and see how React Native delivers on its promise of our dream. We get to normal targets, a web app. So that'll be rendered in any browser, Firefox, Safari, Chrome. iOS, we want it to be native to iOS, so I can open just an app or download it even from the App Store. Same thing with Android, download from the App Store. And desktop, I want a native desktop. I actually just want it to be in my object dock here on Mac OS. I don't want to necessarily open another Chrome tab and have yet another Chrome tab open. So I want something native to each one and has native features. And especially if I need to access specific pieces of the hardware, honestly, the browser literally can't access some of the pieces of hardware that a native can't, or native can. So maybe this is a better solution for desktop and Android and iOS, these device-specific platforms. So Eugene Web Dev's app, that's what I'm going to kind of go for here. We're going to start with React Native Dev docs. By the way, any link I show here is linked in the GitHub README, which is already on the Eugene Web Dev's GitHub repo. So go ahead and check any of that stuff out. You can go to it right now. I know you're online. All the links are there. So I'm going to make Eugene Web Dev's app in this presentation because I want to show what that experience is going to be like, and I want to find out how close we can get to that dream. If I go to the docs, the first thing they're going to tell me to do is install Expo. So sure, that's easy peasy, right? npm install globally Expo CLI, and then init my awesome project name, whatever that is, npm start. Very, very normal stuff. This is Node 12, by the way. Explicitly says that Node 12. So if you're on something lower, I know I have not necessarily updated to the next or to the latest versions of Node. They're above 12 because of AWS. In my case, I still write stuff sometimes in the AWS supported Node versions, which is not necessarily up to date. So they're a little behind too as far as their Node versioning. But here we go, installed Expo. So wait, what is Expo? The whole point of this was React and React Native, but Expo is this whole nother term that maybe you haven't heard of at all. So here's Expo. Here's a picture from their site, expo.io. So the pitch is Expo is a free and complete workflow for creating next generation iOS and Android apps, and this is using React Native. They also make some promises themselves. Like if you look in the side screen there, fall in love. Fall in love is a pretty big promise. This is interesting. So this is the tooling for React Native that they're really pushing. You don't necessarily have to use npm, by the way. Other package management works as well. So this is what they say from their on their website. Expo CLI is a tool for developing apps in Expo. With Expo. In addition to command line interfaces, you also get a web face graphical user interface. Cool. That pops up in your web browser. Like this is the first things you're going to get from the React Native docs. They're going to tell you to go ahead and use that. If you're not comfortable with using terminal and prefer GUIs, cool. That's all fine and good. So thus far, we have this option. We can go with Expo, which is the first thing that React Native Docs currently tells us to do, or we can go just straight up React Native, where we won't have the Expo limitations like using Node, using that version of Node, React and React Native will go back down to further versions. So cool, we have some choices. I'm going to go with what just they recommended, which is using Expo. All right, Expo, cool. So npm start or Expo start, and terminal will return this. This is stuff happening on our local, on our network, and some options. That's great. That's great. So we already have this tooling built in that's already been downloaded and working. Hit W like it says to view it in the browser. So we get a project console, and this is, I think, is really interesting. We get this whole console that is about our project, and it has our options here in a web interface. You know, it says it's a GUI, and it is a GUI, but it's web-based. You know, it's running on localhost here. So right away, before I even get started in my project, the first thing I see is, excuse me, is my options: iOS simulator, web browser, Android device or emulator, and even sending things out. So right away, the project's already delivering a little bit on its promise, I would say, where it's handling all these things for me. Running in the iOS simulator, I don't have to necessarily open Xcode. Same thing with Android Studio. Yeah, this Expo tooling is already doing this for me. And same thing with setting up a web browser and everything like that. So this is, I can see why they're pushing this hard on the docs. So we'll keep going with it. Cool, it already did my stuff. And if I just check it on the network on Safari and iPad, it's welcome to React Native, the default Hello World React app that I would expect if I was doing React. And that's cool. So let's check out some virtual devices just for fun before I even get started. Can we see this on a virtual device? Yep, we can. Try to get Xcode to show up the normal virtual device. I don't even have to go into Xcode. I'm on a Mac in this example. So cool that it already worked. I did get an error the first time, and that's because I needed a Xcode update. And that's my little graphic there. This was, as far as I could tell, only to have the latest device emulated, which is the SE, the newest device. So Apple, of course, wants you to develop for the newest devices. Great, I just needed that quick update. That's all I had to do. Give it a second, and I get an emulated device. So it even auto-installed on my very old Amazon Fire. So this is a very old Amazon Fire. If you know anything about the Amazon Fire line, these blue background ones are pretty old. I tethered it and told it to install, and it downloaded the Expo app, which is just a wrapper for all of this code, so it can run on native. Didn't have to do anything; it just ran. So that was very cool. That was like really super cool. So already in my Hello World, I've hit the desktop browser. I've hit any browser on the network, so whether it's mobile or not. My iOS device, in this case, it was emulating, like I said, the SE, and a tethered Android device, Kindle Fire. I didn't install Android Studio because I already had an Android device, and I just wanted it. I was letting Xcode handle the virtual devices. Android, cool. Let's do a physical device. So thanks, Expo. All of this was really simple. It all worked pretty much out of the gate with only one update, and didn't have any pain points as far as I had. So that's great. Our environment is working. It is already going on virtual devices and physical devices without hardly any setup other than a couple clicks. What does that give us as far as like getting down to the code? We get a directory that looks like a pretty normal React directory. We have our app.json, we have app.js, index.js, pretty normal stuff. We have a couple extra folders that you wouldn't have in a normal React directory, like iOS and Android. And inside of these directories, you're going to see the normal iOS and Android folder structure, Gradle for Android stuff, and the Xcode proj for iOS. All that stuff's in there. It's already built for you. I didn't have to set up anything with this tooling. So our hello world is coming along as far as our targets and stuff. So this is good. All right, let's dive into a very simple app. We're on YouTube right now. That's great. Let's get some of those YouTube videos and make a quick app out of this. For the YouTube credentials, I decided to go with Amazon Web Services API Gateway. This is a proxy to that holds my YouTube tokens and sets my CORS policy. All the things I don't necessarily think my app needs to deal with. My app should just get the data and deal with the data. Amazon Web Services, in this case, will deal with holding my tokens, authentication, refresh token, all that other stuff. That can happen in Amazon. That's totally fine. My app just needs to get the data and do something with it. So cool. So that's all done. I did that outside of this this presentation. Once we get into actually doing the code, we really quickly find, if you've done React, some normal React stuff. Component did mount, the lifecycle method that tells us that this component has been loaded and it should execute all the things inside. So that's great. So we go and get the data. This is hitting my Amazon endpoint to get the prepared data. I have excluded some things in that process. I excluded videos that don't have thumbnails, videos that are not published publicly, the private ones, those are excluded. I'm handling all that stuff on the Amazon side just to keep this very much scoped to the React stuff, which is great. This is good. We get the JSON, response.json, pretty normal React stuff. This would be exactly what I would do in a React app. So let's add a little more. From the videos, from this response JSON, we're gonna map through them and handle for clicks. We're gonna get the thumbnails that are the URLs that the API gave us, and we are then going to handle for any click functions or any click events. And that's pretty much it. There really isn't a whole lot to this application. We're just getting YouTube videos. I also wanted a simple header. The reason I want a simple header is because style. I wanted to check out how that works. So this is a different component than the HTTP request I just did using fetch. So now I have two components. I have a header component and a fetch component that then spits out an array of images and links. That's pretty much it. This is pretty normal web dev stuff at this point, styling it and getting everything prepared for the user. So I run all this with the two components, again, very much just like React, and I get very much React web application. This is in the Chrome browser, DevTools set to iPhone 5. I usually do that just to check that out. I'm usually caring about really legacy devices, small, old devices, to be honest. And this looks good. If you click on any of these, they go to YouTube, and they just open up in the YouTube either app on the phone or in the browser. And this is great. This is just an array of thumbnails, all I wanted. Very simple. And that works great on web, right? That works great in the browser. But what about my other targets? I still have Android, iOS. I care about those things. So I think this is a pain point for a lot of people developing mobile apps is I don't have the target device and I can't create a virtual one. The case here is very much so for anybody using, it starts probably with people using Linux and Windows, because Xcode just doesn't exist on those. You can't, creating a virtual device on those isn't very great. If you have a Mac, creating a virtual device for Android Studio is fine, but it is also nice to have real devices. But not everybody can afford all those, and maybe this is a hobby project, maybe this is a starter project or prototyping. I'm not sure. How do we handle for that with this setup? The nice part is Expo has also handled for this. So Expo has been doing a lot as far as tooling goes. Like even when I was changing around the functions in my code before this, I changed the name of a function, and Expo actually popped up and said, hey, you changed the name of this function. Do you want me to update the dependencies therein, all the other files that call this? And I said yes, and it just did it. So that was really cool. So Expo goes even further and offers you the ability to run your code in the browser and check it on emulated devices. So this happens at snack.expo.io, and I used this used to be RN Playground a long time ago, and it turned into snack.expo. And the whole idea still is that you have an online editor, an online virtual device, or the web, and it just you can check your stuff there. Currently, it uses appetize.io for free. This is all free, by the way. Appetize.io does just that. It will check things on these devices for you. If you're using it in Expo, you may encounter a wait time, as they have what appears to be a limited amount of devices or emulation devices, whatever it is, available to free to the public. So you can get queued for that, and that's fine. But you can check for sure on any of these devices, even if you don't have them. So that's very cool that Expo is handling this for you. I think that's great. It makes your development time, all those pain points, it makes that pain point go away of what does it look like on an actual device? What does it look like on a virtual device? You get to check some of this out. Okay, so we did that, and it's not quite the same. So you see a very small difference here, which is how each one of the OSs handles that area on the very top. iOS makes it transparent, Android does not. So these are okay. This is coming up on our first exception. By the way, if you want to check any of this out, code is available right there on the link. The link is already in the GitHub repository. So if you want to go to that repo and check out the link, you can do live coding on it. Check it out. Everybody can. It's all free. You don't even necessarily, I don't believe, have to sign up at snack.expo. I think you can start editing it, but you can also sign up and save it. So if you want to do live coding on that, go for it. It's there for you. So they're not quite the same. The other thing that's not quite the same here on these two devices is something I found on mobile development, which is the default is portrait, whereas on normal web development, the default is landscape. So a lot of times in dealing with stuff with responsive, I'm worrying more about vertical than I am horizontal in that regard. So that's a little bit different. You know, React and React Native both use Flexbox for responsiveness, but still it's the vertical alignment that seems to come up the most of what you're going to change. So, okay, so not the same. We got some exceptions, and that's not a big deal because styles by target size, yeah, we have to do this anyway as web developers. Whether it's native or not, the screen area of the phone is the screen area of the phone. So this is something we've always had to deal with since mobile development and even screen size before that with laptops and desktops. So this has always been a web dev problem. I like this graphic because it shows a lot of Windows devices and BlackBerry, which I think is funny. Just found it randomly online and it cracks me up. But yeah, that's something we're gonna have to deal with. It's fine. But some other more web dev specific expectation or exceptions, I think, are the primitives. The primitives differ. So if you want a div element in React Native, you should probably use Vue. And if there's no anchor tags, so I had to create a method that to fire the linking.open URL and then pass URL as an argument. Okay, all right, that's okay. And want margin left style? You're going to be using margin left instead of margin dash left. Those are all things for React Native, and then how things differ. Not really a big deal if you ask me on this small project. It's like whatever, I can deal with all of those. That's not a big deal. Not married to the word div over anything else or dashes versus camel case or whatever. So not going to worry about that. Okay, our third target, desktop. So for desktop, I went with React Native for Windows plus Mac OS, which is a Microsoft GitHub or Microsoft project on GitHub. I guess GitHub is owned by Microsoft, so it's a Microsoft project to bring React Native to the desktop. Mac OS X and Windows, whatever version. I'm not sure what they support. I don't have a Windows machine, so that part of the testing I didn't really get too deep into. So really easy to get started. npx React Native, macOS init, which is what I did for my desktop here, and go into pod install also, so I can use Xcode. So the other thing I have to do after that is run it. npx run React Native and macOS. So for this example, this particular target, I wanted to really stay close as it possibly can, and we're just going to try it out as the React Native code I already have for Android and iOS, which I already looked at. It's in the snap example. It's in the code. I don't want to necessarily start handling for changes because I want to try and understand what changes I'm going to need to make and exceptions I need to handle for. So I copy my app.js, which is default, header.js, which is just the Eugene Web Devs text and the blue background, and the other component, which is http_request.js, and I put these into the desktop app directory. No changes, like zero code changes. I just copied and paste app.js from my previous code over the existing or the init code, and created these other two component files with the code. No changes whatsoever. So, and 100% of the same code works well, 99%. The style looks off a little bit, and I needed an Expo package because I need that for the links to work. But already I have almost exactly what I had before, like 99% of what I had before, running in an application that is running on OS X. And you can see in the object doc I have next to it on the left, right above my applications folder, that icon there with the applications logo on top of it, the page, the applications logo, that is this app running. And this is not a browser. This is 100% just a native application to OS X now. And I changed zero code, absolutely nothing else. So 99% already. We do have a couple exceptions here. I didn't account for dark mode. I have dark mode enabled on my MacBook, which is cool. Didn't think about it with the other devices, mostly because they kind of filled up full screen, and this one the screen's just a little big. It's just bigger. Also, the linking didn't really work out the gate, so I need to make some exceptions for that. Device-specific styles now in the future will need to be handled for. The more targets you have, the more style options probably will show up, and that's okay. We can handle for those. Honestly, style exceptions, that kind of stuff, deal with it. We can deal with that. That is not a big deal, I would say, for having 99% coverage or code base that works across these devices. So I can totally deal. So at this point, we have one code base. We have 3 targets. Check. Dream? Yeah, I'm going to say yeah. This actually does fulfill the dream. I wrote code once. I made 0 changes after my first initial coding for the web app. It went on, the code ran perfectly fine and really well on iOS and Android and on the web. And then I even went further and copied and pasted into another framework for desktop. So dream, yeah, probably. So what does that dream look like? Like, does it actually look usable? So here's what it looks like across all of my test devices and everything I have. Here we have the exact same code base, the exact same stuff I just showed. This is running in Firefox on my Raspberry Pi. There in the large background with the Turan style art desktop. Below that, you can see my MacBook. This is my MacBook Pro running OS X. This is running the native, again, not browser. This is running the native application. You can't quite see it. It's kind of stretched kind of wide because I need to fit the other devices. This is my iPhone 7 running the same application. This is my Android running the same application. This is a Kindle Fire that I mentioned before running the same application. And then in the corner, there's the iPad mini running the same application. These are all running it via the Expo app, which is just a wrapper. So this is how Expo has you test everything before you actually deploy to app stores, and that's fine. It's going to work the same way via the wrapper or via its actual build target. So I have, 5 different devices here, all running the exact same code base, and they look pretty close to the same. So let's get into some things that are maybe not ideal. What's not supported? So this is not terribly ideal. Notifications are not yet supported across all of them, the exception being the web, honestly. The other ones are supported, iOS and Android. I don't know about the desktop because Expo doesn't actually tell me. I'd have to test that one. The other big thing and these aren't neither, so notifications I thought about because of the nature of the application I made, which is a YouTube application and make YouTube videos, maybe tell people to come watch them when they're live, especially. But payments always come up. Everybody wants to monetize things, and everybody, things cost money. So payments, Stripe and Apple Pay are supported. Web's not supported. So if you have 3 targets like this project did, and you want to collect payments, you're gonna have to come up with something else, some other solution that's not just out of the box from Expo, which isn't the end of the world if you ask me, but something to consider, especially because payments come up a lot. Payments and notification, I would say, come up a lot in mobile development, native mobile development, sorry, and more so in web development for mobile as things move forward. Most of the APIs that are missing kind of look like this, where the emulator or the simulator isn't necessarily supported, but the actual hardware is. So if you can tether in, yeah, you can still test on an actual hardware device. Again, any links here are already in the GitHub repo. But these are definitely something to consider before you get started down this path. If these are deal-breaking features, then yeah, you might want to take a look at the supported by Expo SDK. Not to say that it's not supported if you do not use Expo. React Native is very flexible, and there are ways around a lot of this stuff. But as supported out of the box for Expo, yeah, not so much for those two. Also, this is probably more true for even React Native. So things that are just too new. So AR is not supported by Android emulator, iOS simulator. It's not supported by web, even though I'm covering that up. It's just too new. It's just too new, and they haven't had a lot of development in it, and that's fine. I don't think this is necessarily the way to go if you want to do something like AR. iOS and Android both have their own AR. Was it AR Kit and I remember what the Android one's called, but they have their own AR frameworks for native development. This might be something you want to do. I noticed that Expo references Expo 3 AR, which sounds like 3JS, which is the big AR framework for JavaScript. So probably trying to leverage that, but getting developers to work on this for free it's tough. It's open source. You have to wait. And at the end of all of this, you still have to deal with the app stores. And that's true for native apps as well. So that's not a benefit or a drawback. It's just part of dealing with the app stores. So that's great. We did it all. We got the dream, and that's cool. What about other JS frameworks, right? Like React isn't the only JS framework out there. It's great. I like React, but there's also the 2 other really popular ones. There's more, but there's these 2 are the most popular: Vue.js and AngularJS, right? So Vue has Vue Native, specifically Vue, but this is really just a wrapper for React Native. So I'm not exactly sure why you'd want to use Vue Native unless you really like the Vue way of doing things, and that's totally fine. But at the end of the day, you're going to be writing a React Native app anyway. So you have another layer of APIs on top of this layer of APIs down to the native. I kind of would just say do React Native instead of Vue Native. But if your app's very simple, probably like the one I just did, Vue Native is probably going to work just fine. And you can do things in Vue and use all the normal Vue stuffs that Vue provides and probably be very comfortable in it. So native script seems a bit more interesting for JavaScript heavy developers. And if you're a Vue developer or a React developer, you probably are pretty comfortable in JavaScript no matter what. So this is their promise from their website: truly native mobile apps with Angular, Vue.js, TypeScript, or JavaScript. So all of this is JavaScript under the hood, which is great. It doesn't have the same amount of tooling, but it does have quite a bit of examples for your framework you like. This is really cool if you're not into the frameworks and you're doing TypeScript or just JavaScript, and you want to make a very simple web app. This could work very, very well. I have not used this one or Vue Native, but reading the docs, I just read the docs, and they seem like I can just recreate this application I just did pretty easily. Flutter is a different thing. It's from Google. It's Google's UI kit for building beautifully. This is from their description. And natively compiled applications. I have used Flutter actually. I used Flutter with an intern here, and it was pretty easy. It uses Dart.js, which is just a JS, another JS superset. It's good. It's pretty good, and it's if you're using Dart already, you'll be very at home in Flutter. It compiles pretty easy. It works across all the things just as well as React Native does. Some further considerations. There's some other things you're gonna have to consider, I think. So, Stream said about Weeks. Weeks is like React Native for Vue. However, I think it was started by Alibaba. I can't remember, but it doesn't seem to have a whole lot of development behind it, so it's not quite the equivalent. Anyways, just wanted to answer Stream. So, one of the things you have to consider is cold start times. So, cold start times are a bit slow with any of these apps, any of these frameworks. React Native especially has some tips and tricks and functions that will speed up and basically lazy load things so you can get a faster start time. But if that's a big consideration for you, something to think about. Competing against native apps that are fully native, they may have features you don't have just because they have access to the APIs you don't have. If you're gonna want to do something that's like competing against a strictly iOS app that is done in iOS and it has access to all the iOS capabilities that Swift gives it, maybe you don't have the same. Also, new features are not yet supported. So React Native is really good about keeping up on this, but you are always slave to that. You're always going to be wherever React Native is on the features that are supported with new features that come out for your platform. So that's something to consider. It may or may not be a consideration for your application, but it is something to think about. So the very big takeaways that I got from all of this. It's pretty darn good. Honestly, it was really good. This was very painless. This was really quick to set up and really quick to get working across all those devices I showed in that picture. But that is for a very tight scope. This was a very tight scope, and this was a brand new project. If you have an existing project that you want to adapt or add React Native to, you inherit all the complications that exist therein. So keep that in mind. This is also really good for prototyping if you're already into React. Actually, my first exposure to React Native was at a hackathon that I did with Chris. Chris is in the stream right now. You can chat him about it. We did a React Native app. I did the API that fed it, and he did the React Native. But first exposure was really good, and the fact that it was open to doing more than iOS was great. Made it very appealing for this prototyping and this hackathon. We ended up doing a strictly iOS app, but it was really good, especially if you're already into React. So those are great use cases or great situations for your use case. Also, the setup was a breeze. Setup for this was honestly a breeze. It was just the commands I typed. I didn't have to do anything more. And that Expo tooling is really, really good. It's crazy good. So not so good. Let's talk about some not so goods. So maybe not so good for your first React thingy. Chris said in stream that application we made from the hackathon still being used today, by the way. So if you're worried about longevity for React Native, yeah, it's pretty viable working for years. That was the first hack for a cause here in Eugene. So it's been working and usable and perfectly great for years now, like literally years. But yeah, not so good. So maybe not great for your first React thingy. If you want to get started in React, this may not be the place to start because there are some differences. Maybe do a quick React web app, nothing too complicated, but just get into React first, I would say a little bit. Large scope projects, if the scope's super large and this is your first time or you have not a lot of experience, I don't know. I could see it going both ways for large scope projects. On the one hand, the large scope means a lot of targets, and that's good. That's exactly what this does well. But a large scope and lots of access to different parts of the hardware, maybe not so much. Combining with existing native, you're gonna, like I said, you're gonna inherit a lot of stuff from your existing native applications. So where you combine that is going to add complexity probably. And then, like I said, over and over again, lots of hardware needs. The more access you need to the actual hardware, the more chance there is for something to not work as well as you would like. Not to say that it doesn't have access to a lot of the hardware, which it has access to most. But we're talking about very edge here, like really specific hardware stuff. If you have like let's say the new iPhone 11, and some of the sensors on it, React Native may or may not support those yet. So something to consider. So yeah, you can also use React Native with the native app code that you already have. And we've seen this a bunch of times with companies like Facebook, who supports it, obviously, Airbnb and Stripe. These are great examples. So Facebook does use native code for their main application, and they mix in some React Native there too. So this is great. That means their native code can access the newest and greatest, biggest hardware like this guy's holding, and the React Native can streamline a little whatever they need there, which is great. Airbnb, who was all in on React Native before, has decided to kind of pull back a little bit and do some more native stuff. Stripe is going the other direction, where they're going all in on React Native going forward, but still continuing some of their legacy native code. Sorry. So you can mix and match. You're not locked into anything here, which I think is really cool. If your application gets mature enough that that's going to be a big need, or if you have already a mature app that is a big need, it's great that React Native is flexible enough to fit in there as well. So this is a great quote I really, really like. React Native does not mean we should use JavaScript for everything. React Native does not mean we shouldn't use native for anything. This is from Leland Richardson from Airbnb at the React conference, and that's true of like most tools, right? Like everything is define your scope, define your use case, see which tool fits. So I really like that quote, and that's cool, especially from a company that was big into, or still is big into React Native. So that's my presentation on my kind of quick project. Thanks, everybody. I grabbed this graphic so you can do all the things like comment, share, subscribe. So I'm just going to check out the stream. I know it's on a little bit of a delay, but I'm going to try to answer any questions in the stream. So if you want to just toss those in there, that sounds good. Let me switch this back. Cool. So let's see what we got here in the stream. Wow, looks like a lot of stuff from Chris. Hey, Chris. How robust is the syntax? So that's from, looks like Erlinson, Josh. How robust is the syntax? That's an interesting question, because at least from the development I did just on this application and some other things, the syntax is okay, but it's a superset, right? It's sitting on top of something else. That's sitting on top of something else, kind of. It's trying to take syntax from React, and that sits on top of the native APIs. So how robust is it? I would say it's what it needs to be, because it's scoped. It's not trying to be its own necessarily programming language, right? It's not trying to be like, this is how you make applications across the board. Instead, it's trying to fill a gap between, or fill a need between React, or using React to fill a need between web development, really, and native applications. So it looks like Robert asked, what learning resources do you recommend for React Native? Books, online courses. First thing I would say is do some React projects if you haven't already. just do some simple web apps. After that, the Expo docs are really, really good. Um, I didn't see a whole lot of uh, books on this, honestly, like ebooks or something or online courses. This seems like it's really trying to keep up with the newest stuff. So making source material for that is kind of hard. That's kind of why I went with this direction of let me just make an application and share the code and see where it is now. As far as learning it and tinkering, that Expo editor online is great. If anybody has any resources that they've used for React, especially, and React Native, go ahead and put them in the comments here for anybody who's looking for those. So Chris asked, is there a preferred CI/CD React Native? Does something like AWS work better or Google better than Google Firebase or Azure for hosting? As far as I could tell, no. The CI/CD stuff is great for web applications, but when it comes to submitting to the store, I didn't really see a piece that fit in there, and maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't find one in like Travis CLI. Like how do you automatically submit to the iOS store, for example? Oh yeah, if you're going to do React, for sure, get the Chris mentioned the Chrome React tools. Um, that's true of Vue or Angular as well. I think they all have extensions that will show you what's going on a bit more under the hood for developing your web apps in React, Vue, or Angular. From there, the React, all the stuff you're going to learn about React will really, a lot of it will just transfer over to React Native. Let's see. Anything else in stream? Expo works with TypeScript, built-in or manual setup. So Expo, I think, does work with TypeScript, but I think that's an NPM package I saw. I didn't try it out. If I was going to go with TypeScript, I'd probably go with NativeScript, though, because they promise it and they are maintaining it. Expo really does seem like it's going to be your tooling for React Native specifically. So you're going to coming from a React point of view, whereas NativeScript is coming from a bit more of a JavaScript first point of view, and then TypeScript, and of course Vue, Angular, and they also NativeScript is also offering support for React as well, just not as much currently. They are working on that, so they're really coming from a just JS point of view. Let me check stream here. So Chris said, could you hand off the AR portions of the app and use RN? So yeah, you can hand off the AR portions because you can use React Native with your native code. So you can use like ARKit and stuff and use React Native for like your opening screens or your options menu, for example. Facebook actually does some of this stuff with their app, and they also use React Native for some of their apps that don't necessarily need access to a lot of stuff like what is it? Their ads manager, for example, I believe, is all React Native because it's just hitting the API and managing their ads. So works great. Their official Facebook application, I believe, is a mix of both. I want to say, but yeah, as far as like some of the stuff that you need to get around to get to more cutting edge, more already supported by native, you can mix and match. And maybe React Native is a great way to manage your options for both. And you write a native application for both. Use React Native as kind of a way to write one code base for particular pages or views probably in your native app. Not seeing a lot more in stream. I'm going to scroll back up a little bit. All right. Okay, well, not seeing much more in stream, so I think we're going to call it. It's been about an hour, which is usually about time to do for web devs. Thanks to everybody for coming, and thanks everybody for for watching this channel and supporting Eugene Web Devs. Hope to continue this on with this community. This has been really, really good. Yeah. So we'll see you guys next time.